Test for starch, protein and fat. In this module, you will learn to test the presence of starch, protein and fat in food items. One should have milk in his diet because it is a complete food. But what is meant by complete food? Complete food means the food that contains all the required components of food such as carbohydrates, proteins, fats, minerals, etc. Milk contains almost all of these required components, so it is a complete food. Let us conduct an activity to find out the presence of components of food such as starch, protein and fat in different food items. To conduct this activity, you need a few potatoes, pulses in powdered form, crushed cashew nuts, a knife, a dropper, a candle, a matchbox, test tubes, iodine solution, copper sulfate solution, caustic soda solution, and water. Let us first test the food items for the presence of starch. Take 4 test tubes. Now mark them as A, B, C and D and place them in a test tube stand. Cut a small piece of potato with the knife and put it in the test tube A. Take a little quantity of powdered pulse and put it in the test tube B. In the test tube C, add a few pieces of crushed cashew nuts. In the test tube D, add a little amount of water and label this as control. With the help of a dropper, add few drops of iodine solution in each test tube. Now wait for 1 to 2 minutes and observe. What do you observe? The potato piece in the test tube A turned blue-black. You can also observe that no change has occurred in the test tubes B, C and D. Starch reacts with iodine solution to give a blue-black color. The test tube containing potato showed blue-black coloration. This confirms that potato contains starch. Let us now perform next activity to test the presence of proteins in the food items. First, take 4 test tubes. Now mark them as A, B, C and D and place them in a test tube stand. Now, similar to the first experiment, put a piece of potato in test tube A, a little quantity of powdered pulse in the test tube B, and few pieces of crushed cashew nuts in test tube C. In the test tube D, add a little amount of water and label this as control. Then add few drops of water in each test tube. Shake all the test tubes well. Now with the help of dropper, add 2 drops of copper sulfate solution and few few drops of caustic soda to each test tube. Again shake all the test tubes well. And wait for a few minutes. Observe the change in color in all the test tubes. This time you will observe that in the test tube B, the color of the food item changes from blue to violet. But why is it so? This is because proteins give violet color on reacting with copper sulfate and caustic soda. Hence, we conclude that pulses contain proteins. Pulses are a rich source of proteins. Let's conduct a test that confirms the presence of fat in food substances. Take 4 pieces of paper. Mark these pieces as A, B, C and D respectively. On paper A, keep a small potato. On paper B, keep powdered pulses. On paper C, keep crushed cashew nuts. Do not keep anything on paper D. Wrap each food item in its respective papers and crush them properly. Now straighten the papers and remove the food items from them. What do you observe on the paper pieces? Let us see. There is nothing on the paper A and paper B. There are some peculiar patches on the paper C. No, there is nothing on paper D also. Let us find out more about the patches on paper C. Are these patches oily? Light a candle and hold it against the light. What do you observe? A very faint light passes through the oily patch. An oily patch on the paper confirms the presence of fat in food item. Therefore, we can conclude that cashew nut contains fat. In this module, you have learned that food items contain some essential components. For example, potatoes contain starch, pulses contain protein, cashew nut contains fat.